How can I play more games in less time? Duh, that's it. Have a timer for when you're playing the games. Too long didn't watch? These are not an auto buy because they modify the game you're playing so much it's practically like playing a new game. So now on to the analysis. We're here to stress test this playing method to see why it's probably not more widely used. Can chess timers speed up board gaming in a potentially positive direction by adding a strict time limit to players? 4 seconds. Oh my god.
Sorry, I'm such a card geek.
Oh. Yeah, it's not magic.
I'll pause it for you.
Yeah, we're using a chess timer.
Nice. Okay.
We only played competitive games for this. 5 games were tested, from checkers to patchwork to even brass Birmingham, and we'll give letter grades to how well we think the games work under the chess timer system. We'll also tell you our 7-step system to use chess timers for your board gaming. We were also playing the game sometimes on today's sponsor, the Origins table. We played Brass Birmingham on the Origins table while having a streaming setup on the table, and it handles it no problem. Under the topper is a legit looking arena area, and it has cup holders too. Cup holders. Nice. The Origins has been handling all the games we've thrown at it, with just enough space for TI4 with Prophecy of Kings. If you're interested in picking up a table, we have an offer for you. Use our code SHELFSIDE at checkout and get a custom play surface like ours that's worth $200. Back to using the chess timer, we use the Leap chess timer. Basically just a generic chess timer from Amazon, not sponsored. This actually worked really well despite looking quite plasticky online, but I guess it does say professional. In practice, you could slam the plastic down and it felt sturdy enough. It never missed a beat on time. It can do multiple hours, but again, you can use any chess timer to play a game. You can even use a free app on your phone if you want. Okay, but how are you using a chess timer for board gaming? You know, board gaming where there's components, phases, and a lot of rules for each game. Well, we were careful to pick certain games, more details on that later, but also my opponent and I both had to play the game at least once before using the chess timer. Sometimes this would be playing the game right beforehand, sometimes we played that game a while ago and we're just familiar with the rules. The benefits. You know how people like board games because they're a physical thing? Well, a chess timer is adding another physical component to your game where you have to tap it for each of your turns. Your mileage may vary based off of your timer, but we found this physical component to pass your turn, press it, to be very satisfying. Pass my turn, press it, pass my turn, press it. I mean, you've probably seen or used chess timers for actual chess, and there's a certain thrill when you're going fast and repeatedly pressing the timer to pass off turns. If you're setting low time for your board game or just happen to be really short on time, you're gonna see your hand gravitating real close to that chess timer while you play. In fact, there's actually a lot of new skills that we quickly noticed you're asked to do, of course depending on how much time you give yourself. But having to be economical of how you move pieces, grab money, and doing turn upkeep is something you want to be conscious of. There's definitely this real-time dexterity element to now every board game as you position extra components to be within close hands reach, use extra devices like card holders to free up your hands, and even get change for your money on your opponent's turns to save time. Time management is now something. Take that, all you AP prone players. But seriously, you're going to have to allot time for certain parts of the game depending on how that game functions. Like for example, in Brass Birmingham, each era slowly gets more complex, and then eventually the decision space tapers off as your hand gets smaller. So you want to allot more time towards the middle rounds of each era. And learning how to think on your opponent's turn is a new thing, which can definitely help games running faster when playing without a chess timer. There's a fun truth that the longer your opponent takes on their turn, the longer you have time to think while their time is running down. And the same goes in reverse. If you take too long on your turn, your opponent has time to think on your watch, or they can even have some time to relax. If you want to add in an element for both players to relax, you can totally make a rule for that. In Brass Birmingham, between the 2 eras of the game, we reset the timer so that you can rest there. Or in Monolith Arena, whenever someone needs to execute a combat where you're doing upkeep for the game, you can pause the timer. When we add all these things up, playing with a chess timer is actually just like playing another game. Like, you can get way more replayability out of 2-player games you currently own just by implementing some time into it. Patchwork is a relaxing quilting game? Nope, now it's a super frantic game to rush and grab pieces and jam them into your quilt ASAP before the time runs out. Then you can press your chess timer. Of course, some games do better with the chess timer, and we'll get into how games qualify in a bit. The final benefit is time. Yes, you're gonna have more time to play more games. You can literally set however long you want to play each game, and then give and take some time for setup, takedown, and then the parts when you briefly pause the timer. So that's anywhere between 5 to 30 minutes more than what you set on the chess timer. That's how long you're gonna be playing. You can get to churn your brain more per sitting, and who doesn't want to play their favorite game more? The concerns. Yes, using a chess timer is for Chess. So there's going to be quite a bit of bumps to using it for board game entertainment. First is the stress. Adding a clock to a game adds quite a bit of stress and anxiety and worrying that just might not be fun for some people out there. This is possibly not that bad if you set the timer to a very gentle time limit, but it totally makes sense that people play turn-based games to not feel the impending countdown of time and have to deal with this extra device outside of playing a game. Many are playing board gaming for leisure, meaning that they don't want to get worked up in a panic worrying about not looking stupid while trying to do decent plays, while the time ticks lower and lower. And you never want to be in a situation where you're freaking out on time and just have to do a random move out of desperation, because then you're not really playing the game. Think about chess. If you're using a timer, you're probably very comfortable with the game, having played it dozens and dozens of times, having memorized all the rules, and then also memorized multiple openings of the game. Plus, the game is ultimately just moving one piece a turn, as opposed to board gaming, multiple pieces you have to move around every turn. People play chess for the feeling of competitiveness and mastery, and well, you might not be playing board games for that. You might just want to enjoy the systems with your friends in a more casual way, where players don't want to lose because they ran out of time. Losing on time is such a tournament-related thing. A game night is usually not so competitively framed. Think of all the trash talk and hustling that chess players do to get an advantage with time.
Not friendly. Whoa, that was right there.
You know how we were talking about the dexterity skill you need? Well, any game with a money element is going to be really fiddly and weird to do when handled in real time. When numbers start getting big for buying stuff, this can be kind of a mess. And you're probably going to be constantly getting change for your money, or you have to deal with a ridiculous amount of ones in front of you, which also slows you down. See, it can sometimes feel like the denominations of money are playing you, and if you play any game with weird or no denominations, or even paper money, handling that is going to be such a pain. Then any game with a decent amount of reading in the middle of the game gets messy to unfair when combined with time. We got the missions from Star Wars Rebellion, and then card games really come to mind here, where you want to pick up and read your opponent's cards in the middle of the game. If you're on a time crunch to read their cards, but you still need to read them, it becomes kind of like a speed reading contest. So it's pretty tough to use a chess timer in any game where there's going to be a lot of novel abilities, like Ashes Reborn. But maybe something like Soulforge is easier since the abilities aren't as complex. Also, any game with a countering mechanic like Yu-Gi-Oh's traps or MTG spells to play on your opponent's turns gets so messy. We also mentioned this a little bit earlier, where you have to go and occasionally pause the chess timer because board games have different phases that you need to account for. Depending on the game, this can be very frequently, like Brass Birmingham needing to do the round by round income, drawing cards, and rearranging turn order after both players' turns. Repeatedly starting and stopping the timer is not only more fiddly, but can often lead to time not feeling accurate or even being accurate. Like, it's really up to the honor system at that point, where you promise not to think about your turn while the game is paused for upkeep, or if the game is paused for your opponent to look up a rule and you just look away from the game. If these concerns don't really bother you, well, here's my 7-step system on how to use this. 1. Acquire a chess timer. This can be a physical one like ours, or just use a phone app or something. 2. Pick a 2-player game that you and your victim are already comfortable with, or have time to play one game of to get comfortable with. Games with minimal reading and upkeep is good. Trading card games beware. In Euros, the more phases they have outside of players' turns, the harder it is to manage. Whatever you pick, try to have the rules down pat or an FAQ nearby to minimize flailing over rules. 3. Figure out how much time to use. Good benchmark is to go by what's printed on the box, but come on, you can have some more fun by cutting players' times by 1, 5, or even intervals of 10 minutes. 4. Figure out when you should pause the game. At the very least, you'll have to emergency pause for rules or if a component falls on the ground. But you should also make it clear that you will be pausing the game for any neutrally aligned phase, like an upkeep phase or a battle phase. For example, in Monolith Arena, we paused when doing fighting, where there's no decision making, but you have to move pieces.
This dies.
That dies.
This dies.
All right.
Your turn.
5. Set the timer down and go. Play. You can have the person that times out automatically lose the game, or be prevented from taking any more turns, or sent to the Shadow Realm. 6. Rejoice! And take a deep breath if you're a little winded by the experience. But you just saved so much time to play this modified version of this board game. 7. Play again if not too exhausted, and tick up or down the timer depending on how that first game went. Curious about what games of yours in your collection you could use for the chess timer? Well, for a comparison, let's go ahead and grade each of these 5 games we used with the chess timer. Checkers! Probably played this at least a dozen times before. Grade S. No extra phases to manage, no reading at all, and it's a quick game so you can practice using the chess timer. The game starts fairly simple, the mid game is the most complicated, and end game tapers down in complexity, meaning that it's pretty easy to use to warm up to a chess timer, and you don't get punished on time late game too hard. Monolith Arena. Played it 5 to 7 times before. Grade B. There's no reading, and the timer causes a gradual buildup of stress with how the board states get more complicated with more units attacking each other. A lot of the time is spent choosing how to orient hex pieces right before the crucial fights. However, you do need to be mindful of pausing the game for when combat actually happens, which can easily be at least 5 to 10 minutes every game. Coup. Played it over 100 times before, I'm not even kidding. Grade D. It barely works. Two-player coup is already a niche thing, and having to keep tapping the chess timer when waiting for someone else to call your bluffs is weird. It's also so short, there's not really any reason to set up a timer for it anyways, and resetting it is kind of annoying. Patchwork. Played it once before doing the chess timer game. Grade B+. There's no reading, and the decision on how to place the patch after you buy it means that each turn is actually made up of 2 parts. So time management is a little more interesting than many short games. You can also keep surveying the purchasing area while waiting for your turn as your opponent's time ticks down. Moving your wooden pieces a couple spaces isn't too fiddly of a thing to do on your turn. However, the money handling is fiddly, whether getting income or spending them on your turn. And finally, Brass Birmingham. Played it 4 times before. Grade C. It's passing, with very little reading, easy to understand board, and the turns are just discarding cards from your hand. However, your turn gets kind of hectic and messy when you're trying to flip multiple industry tiles a turn and have to move income markers. Also, you have to keep pausing at the end of every round, aka after every player takes 2 actions, which is an insane amount of times to keep pausing the game and definitely caused us some time uncertainty. The denominations are also a nightmare because so many ones are needed to buy things. We don't have iron clays too. It definitely escapes a C- because you can divide the total time of the game into 2 segments because there's 2 eras of the game. We did 30 minutes per era, so then there's this cool era time management aspect. And then the board slightly clears after the first era to not overwhelm you for the second era. And here are some other games off the top of my head that would work. Splendor, Seven Wonders Duel, Tigris and Euphrates, Great Western Trail, The Godfather, Corleone's Empire, Takenoko, Votes for Women, Civilization, Wizards of the Grimoire, and Lost Cities. Time. As an element of our modern times, I always feel myself strapped on time to play more board games. So many board games, so little time. Also, I have to make content for board games, so I kind of have to think about ways to play them more. And I'm happy to report that I love playing with the chess timer. Yep, I love it. It makes every one of these 2-player games feel like kind of a sport now, where you have all these dexterity things you have to do, and I'm thinking about all these little ways I can get an advantage on time. And pressing this chess timer is so addicting. I can slam it, I can just lightly press it. It's just so addicting to use. I've always been a competitive guy who's played in card game tournaments and love a challenge, especially when it comes to playing games I already like. And now I feel giddy during my opponent's turns because it's using their time while I get to think. Learning more skills is always a great feeling, and now I feel like I'm getting even more out of one of my favorite hobbies.
No. Wait.
Granted, I know that this method of playing games with some of my friends would just not work, and especially with some of my family. Cause man, I love playing with these people, but they are so slow on their turns, and I know a chess timer would not help them, but gosh, they are so analysis paralysis. If only they could play with a chess timer and learn the ways. This chess timer is my little secret weapon to use with a handful of friends to get through our favorite games faster. Pranav and I confirmed that we could finish Brass Birmingham with setup and takedown about under 75 minutes, which is incredible. Our next challenge is to get it under 45 minutes. I definitely think we could do it. More games, less time. Beautiful. Just beautiful. And I'm so glad I have a friend that's willing to play these games at this fast pace with me. My final say is to at least try using a chess timer for one of your 2-player games if you haven't tried using timer before. You don't have to buy this. You can just use a phone app and it won't cost you anything. Just breathe new life into your collection. You don't need to be buying new games. You can just get more out of the games you already own and play them faster. Yeah, at some point I do want to try this with multiplayer games. I don't know if it will go as smoothly, but that could be a quick video in the future. Thank you to our patrons for making videos like this possible. I was actually talking in our Discord, and that's how I got the idea to make a video about the chess timer. We got all our patrons right here. Thank you guys so much. And yeah, let me know how the chess timer experience goes for you, because I know some friends that would not want to play with it at all, and Pranav loves playing with it, and I love playing with it. We also got our Mad Lads of Cardboard right here. Yeah. Also, let me know if there's any games that are good to use a chess timer with. I'm sure there's many I did not get to talk about. Anyways, let me know how your experience with using a chess timer went like. Again, it's free to use if you use a phone. And yeah, like, comment, subscribe. Bye-bye.